one. The two major federal regulations, there's only two that are big. I mean, we have other ones, but they're not really big on the seven. The two big ones are 33 and 34. 33 and 34. So, Colby, I don't know if you know who was president in 33 and 34, but the president was President Roosevelt. You know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. And all that legislation was called the New Deal. You know, that means the old deal must have sucked. Right? And it did. You know, prior to the 30s, remember, we had the Roaring 20s. And prior to the Roaring 20s, we would say, hey, trust me, you'll love it. 33, you can get right by covering up the screen and saying, are they asking me about paper prospectuses? 33. Paper or prospectuses. 33, Colby says, if you're going to sell brand new securities to the public, very important, brand new securities to the public, you have to make a registration statement, hence the term registered securities. Right? So there are registered securities and unregistered securities, securities that have not been registered. Now, 33, test question, establish some safe harbors or exempt transactions where we're not going to make a registration statement. We're not going to enter into the cooling off period. We're not going to have red herrings. That whole process is very testable. You know, red herrings in 20 days and IOAs, non-binding, and tombstones, very testable. But even more testable are some of the safe harbors, Reg A, Reg D, Rule 147. These are what we call safe harbors or exempt transactions. And you definitely need to know, for example, Reg A, we can raise up to 75 million. Rule 147, an intrastate offering of securities. The issuer has to have 80% of business and assets within the state. We can only sell it to residents of the state. Reg D, a private placement. And those you need to know that, Colby, there's two. Reg D has two, 506B and 506C. 506B, I can have an unlimited number of accredited investors, but no more than 35 non-accredited. I can't solicit. 506C, I can have only accredited investors and institutional for both of them, but I can't have any non-accredited investors that I can solicit. 34, you can get right by covering up the screen and saying, are they asking about people and places? People and places. That's 34. You know, a big part of 34 is when President Roosevelt changed our industry, created the SEC. You know, when they created the SEC with 34, by the way, they were companion pieces of legislation. So we knew that when we passed 33, Congress was going to pass 34. But President Roosevelt made Joe Kennedy the first chairman of the SEC. And they said, how could you put a fox in charge of the hen house? Because Joe Kennedy was a big securities kind of fraud guy. He's, well, who better is a gameskeeper than a former poacher? He's going to know all the games. He's going to shut them down. So that was all that 33 is about people and places. The big part of 34 to know is, you know, that our industry, again, like unlike any other industry, is let the seller beware. We, the ones selling the security, have to make sure we do it correctly, right? That we've made no omissions of material facts. We haven't made any misrepresentations. The big part there is Reg T is a part of 34, and Reg T gave control of credit extension from broker-dealers to customers to the Federal Reserve Board. You know, prior to 34, I would loan you money to buy anything. You give me 10 grand, I'd loan you 90 grand. That was called the Roaring 20s. There was a crash. And so Reg T says, the Federal Reserve Board says how much you have to be at risk for initially, 50%. Reg T says the Federal Reserve Board can tell you that new issues are ineligible for purchase on margin, new issue 30 days. So, you know, that kind of stuff, I agree with it. It doesn't really have a narrative thread to it, so to speak. So it's just a bunch of stuff. But if you miss your mark and you tell me it's because of federal regulations, I'm going to say, Colby, you had bigger problems. You had bigger problems.